All right, so finishing off my prediction for the main event. Sorry about going over again, guys. When you got good cards like this, it's so hard to get everything you want to get out in 15 minutes. So again, my apologies for going over. I still hope you enjoy both parts of these videos anyway. And if you don't enjoy them anyway, just enjoy them for me. But anyway, like I was saying, in the main event, if Diaz can get the fight to the ground early and often and try to wear Paul Daley out, again, another classic case of the smaller, quicker man versus the bigger, stronger man. I mean, no matter how you put it, guys, in any fight, in any form of competition, if the man is smaller and quicker, he will win every single time. Bottom line. Bottom line. Just want to let y'all know that. But the reason why I say that is because I know that Nick Diaz is a good striker himself, being that he does amateur boxing in his spare time, and he trains with a lot of high caliber boxers. But Paul Daley, man, that guy there is he's a loose cannon, man. And I don't mean that as in his personality. I mean that as in his fighting style, because that's how his punches are thrown. They're thrown like loose cannons, but with very good technique and power at the same time. That's what makes it so good, because he is technical but yet powerful. But Nick Diaz, see, we know that Nick Diaz is not the most smartest fighter. I mean, even though he is incredibly tough, his toughness, stands out so much in his fights that when you think he's on the brink of getting KO'd, he's still in the fight, And I know I shouldn't be surprised by this, but, for a guy that does not use any head movement and who doesn't move around and just basically throws punches and bunches, but still is able to hurt his opponent while he's getting hurt, is just magnificent. I mean, it is. It's just magnificent stuff to watch. Now, although in this fight, if he does not try to get this fight to the ground at certain points in this fight, I don't care how hard of a chin he has, if Paul Daley lands the right punch in the right place, Nick Diaz will fall and he won't get back up. I'm serious. Paul Daley is seriously powerful, guys. I mean, look at Scott Smith. Scott Smith, I think besides Nick Diaz, probably might be the second toughest guy in Strikeforce. I mean, this guy took a beating from Kung Lee in their first fight. Everybody thought that, that fight was over. I went back and I looked at it and I thought the same thing. I mean, Kung Lee was just basically shredding him with, his kicks and those punches, and all of them were landing. And Scott Smith was teetering. He was teetering. I even think one time he even fell down. But, being that he's so incredibly tough, somehow he was able to absorb all of that, and in one false swoop, pow, landed that Rocky Balboa-like punch, and Kung Lee was out. That's the same thing about Nick Diaz. Now I know he doesn't have knockout power, but the punches that he does throw, they do damage. They do damage. They're just like, I don't know, they're just like a bunch of needles, pretty much. They don't hurt you to the point where you bleed to death, but if you get enough shots of that needle, it's gonna hurt. So that's how sharp Nick Diaz's combinations are, and I believe that Paul Daley, even though he is a great striker in his own right, I believe that Nick Diaz does have the capability of hurting him. I do believe he does. Because Nick Diaz does have the reach. He's a lot taller than Paul Daley. So I believe that if he can utilize the jab and set up the combinations correctly, I believe he can land some of them on Paul Daley. I really do. Now, I don't know if he'll knock Paul Daley out clean, but I know he'll stagger him enough to get the fight to the ground and submit him. But I would encourage Nick Diaz, as tough as a guy as he is and as courageous of a guy as he is, I would encourage him, to put his thinking cap on for one night, because, Cyborg, he's a great striker as well, but Cyborg does not possess the type of technique and the type of power that Paul Daley possessed. Paul Daley has that one-hitter quitter, like literally. That's something that Cyborg didn't have. Cyborg had to work a little bit harder, to get that one good shot on Diaz. Now, another thing that's very intriguing about this fight is that, Nick Diaz doesn't like to check leg kicks a lot, and I believe if that's one weakness that Nick Diaz has in his skill set, then that's it. He does not check leg kicks. I hope in this training camp for Nick Diaz, whoever his sparring partner was that does kickboxing, I hope that they practice checking kicks, because Paul Daley has some razor sharp leg kicks. And so did Cyborg. Cyborg was, he was basically shredding Diaz with those kicks. I mean, if you looked at that fight, you saw Nick Diaz's leg almost come above his ear. That's how hard Cyborg was reeling in those kicks. So, if I was Nick Diaz, I would want to check those leg kicks, because if Paul Daley lands one of those leg kicks without Diaz checking them, that's going to take away a lot of stuff. That's going to take away a lot of stuff. And Nick Diaz needs those legs to take Paul Daley down and get the fight to the mat to score the submission. Now that I've said all that, now it's time for the prediction. Now, I've been contemplating this back and forth all week in my mind of how this fight could play out. And one side of my head was envisioning Paul Daley just coming out like a house on fire, just throwing the kicks and the punches from the get-go, and, landing a right hook right on the chops of Nick Diaz and Nick Diaz falling to the mat and Paul Daley jumping on top of him and pounding him out for the victory in the first round. But then again, another side of my mind, or the other side of my mind, was envisioning Nick Diaz taking those punches from Paul Daley, even that one right hook landing square on the chin, and Paul Daley trying to follow him to the mat, and Nick Diaz wrapping him up in his guard and catching Paul Daley in a triangle choke somewhere in like the second or third round. Man, this fight is extremely tough. But you know what, man? You know, every time that I think, you know, Nick Diaz is on the verge of getting knocked out, you know, he just has this ability, this God-given ability, you know, to stay in there. And I know we talk a lot about tough guys, but Nick Diaz's toughness is on a whole nother level. And I think because Nick Diaz's toughness is on a whole nother level, that's why he is the Strikeforce welterweight champion, and I think that's why he's going to be the welterweight champion for a very long time. And really, if you think about it, Paul Daley is, you know, technically a one-dimensional fighter. The only chance he has to win this fight is keeping the fight standing. We know his takedown defense is average. You know, I do not know how well. He doesn't have any submission defense. Let's just be real. You know, Jake Shields tapped him out with ease. You know, who ironically is a training partner of Nick Diaz. So there's another feather in Diaz's cap. So, you know what? I'm going to say that Nick Diaz is going to dramatically win this fight somewhere in the middle of the third round. He's going to end up making Paul Daley punch himself out, and Paul Daley is still going to think, standing up, that, you know, he's going to just punch Nick Diaz until one of his shots land, and Nick Diaz is going to come right back at him and let his hands go, and one of those combinations or body shots or whatever is going to land on Paul Daley in the center of the octagon, and Nick Diaz is going to fall on top of Daley and take his back and rear naked choke him with a battered and bloody face. I'll say that. So, Nick Diaz by dramatic third round submission. But like I said, if Diaz does not use his head standing up, Paul Daley will knock him out. I will say that. So, I'm still keeping that possibility of Paul Daley winning the fight in the back of my mind. But I'm going to go with the smart prediction here, and I'm going to pick Nick Diaz. So, there you go. I know I struggled through this part of the video because, like I said, either guy could win this fight. You know, it's so close. Because, like I said, even though Paul Daley is one-dimensional, you know, he's very good in that one dimension. Extremely good. But anyway, I mercifully got through that. You guys enjoy the fight tonight. And, you know, whatever happens, happens. So, until the next video, God bless you all. Deuces.